by Krishna's grace, that there will be particular things that you have committed to your memory. They're not just on a piece of paper, they're not just in a book somewhere. That we do a little bit of interaction so that you walk away with something. Because just hearing will produce benefit spiritually, but there are ways to increase the retention. So we focus on those ideas. Okay? And those of you who've been here before, you understand that principle. It's well researched and it's certainly well experienced, I think, by anybody. Listening produces about 20% retention. So we do a little bit more so that your time is well invested, and you know time is important. Okay? So the first thing that we do is we check to see what we have. And that's a good thing to do. When you start with something, what do I have? I have to cook. What ingredients do I have? What materials do I have? So let's take a look at what your materials are for today's presentation. All right? In your packets, you have, we call it a study bank, right? And in today, we're gonna call it a little something, just to make it not so threatening. The word study sometimes scares people. We're going to also call it your parikrama guide, because you're going to take a parikrama today. Or you may want to call it your program guide if you're the kind who likes to go to dramas. So it's a study bank, and it is meant for us to fill in sequential stages, the information that we should be committing to our memories. And if we do it properly, it's not as scary as it sounds. Okay? You also have charts. Now this time, by default, we figured out that if we reduce charts, we could actually make them an appendix in the study guide. So if the big charts are a little cumbersome, even if you fold them in half, they will go in an A4 folder. The little charts are also handy. They're in your study packet. Okay? So let's take a look at what we have. That's the first thing you do no matter what you do. You scan. What do I have? Overview. Let's see what I have. All right. So if you pull out your packets with me. All right, you have on the first side the title, Bhagavad Gita of the book, Bhagavad Gita as it is, and this is the overview of the first chapter, entitled Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. There's a little section here which is not so familiar with everybody unless people have been trained in classroom teaching, and that's called instructional objectives. Now that's specifically designed for the facilitator. That means that the facilitator is supposed to try to meet the objectives stated herein. If you're a teacher, you have to have that on the desk. And if you're not there one day, the person substituting can come to the desk and say, oh, this is what we have to cover, and this is what has to be accomplished. So those are called objectives. Almost anything we do has objectives, right? So those are there, and we'll be going over these in detail. But right now we're scanning the whole thing. Notice we have entitled Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3. This is a lot like mathematics or any subject. It has to be learned in sequence, not just you start at the end. But you have to go sequentially so your foundation is strong and you're building on a solid platform. If some of these buildings going up here in Vrindavan were strong on the first floor, strong on the second, third floor a little weak, from third floor on, there's trouble. So everything should be done sequentially so that your foundation is strong all along the way. But it's not threatening because you're doing it sequentially. On the next page, you'll see Bhagavad Gita as it is, and this is a reference to all the themes that are in the Bhagavad Gita. And we will be encircling the ones that are prominent in this particular chapter. Themes run throughout a book, just like music in a particular movie or a play. So we will encircle the particular themes that are significant in this chapter. Stage 5 is called Angles of Vision. This is coming from Srila Prabhupada's request that we research things in the Gita from many directions, not just one. We look at it from many angles of vision, just like a jewel. It has many facets. And the Bhagavad Gita has 700 jewels, so they are to be looked at from, it's endless. You see, this program's been going on for 13, 14 years. Every night, someone's speaking. And every night, by the mercy of Paramatma and Krishna, Someone's presenting an interesting perspective. Below that, we have a numerical inventory. Now that may seem a little technical, but it's practical. If you have to go shopping, what's the first thing you do? You check your wallet. How much money do I have? That will entitle you to have sufficient, if you need, to spend. Or you may need to know how many vegetables I need to buy and what do I have on hand before I do that, so I don't have any duplication. On the next page, we have the slokas of this chapter, and someone will think, well, what's the need for more slokas? I have them in my book. But these slokas are presented differently. They're highlighting what we call content words. What are they highlighting? Content words. That means the most important words are highlighted so that when you read, at first you're scanning, like we're scanning the whole paper now. A smart reader scans first. He doesn't just start slowly at the beginning and plod along, and then he may not finish. So the idea in effective reading is to scan 1, 2, sometimes 3 times before you go through very carefully. That way you've already picked up information and you keep building on what you have. So here we have highlighted content words, and these are the words that pretty much convey the main points of each of the slokas. So we have about, I think, 3 sides here of content highlighted words. All right, you all find that? And everybody following along all right? Okay? We haven't left anybody behind, I hope. Okay. Next we have definitions. Now, Srila Prabhupada in the purports often gives a particular understanding of a term. So that's why that's included here, because sometimes the term definition can have 5, 6 layers of meaning dependent on the realization of the individual soul. So here we want to know what's Prabhupada's definition of particular words, and you'll often check purports to see which words has he defined. Now we've given a huge amount of attention to the names of Krishna and Arjuna, because in one purport in particular, Prabhupada identifies Krishna. I think the number I had wrong. It's about 13 different names. And he said names are given even in material life according to one's task in life. You have to do something in this world. So that what you have to do should fit your task. And even he said in earlier times, astrologers would check the chart and they would see, what is this person's nature? He should have a name like that. For instance, Bhima is considered a voracious eater. But Prabhupada said, it's not that we just eat a lot. He did a lot too. He was quite a fighter. Okay, he performed great tasks. So names are getting according to characteristics. We even see that in our society. Devotees will have names and it seems to fit their natures. Okay? So a lot of attention is given here to Krishna's names and names of Arjuna in the first chapter. Okay? Then from then on, I gave additional definitions. So in the purports, you would find other words that Prabhupada defined. And we included in particular 2 very, very important references to the Bhagavatam. And the translations here are really the strengthening philosophy for us as devotees. And so that's why we've included those 2. There are certain things that keep devotees on the path. They don't want to give up Krishna consciousness no matter how many challenges they face. So these particular quotes from the Bhagavatam have been given there for you, for your reference. On the back, you'll get a list of whatever analogies are presented in the purports. This chapter has 4 analogies or examples. Did you all, everybody with us so far? You find that? Okay. Philosophical points. I could have gone on for pages and pages on this. But what I did was I listed the ones that I had time to make slides for. Because sometimes a slide really brings home the message even more effectively than just the words. So I tried again to, at least as time permitted, create slides that reinforce a philosophical point that Prabhupada's trying to make quite strongly. And those points are messages from Krishna. and instructions from Prabhupada. Okay? Below are the scriptural references, and this is a list of whatever references Prabhupada makes in his purports, not just what I do. He refers to the Bhagavad Gita, he refers to the Gita Mahatmya, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavatam, Chanakya Pandit. Okay? So you understand that section. So this is essentially your program guide. Now from that point on, you have some charts. These are your appendix. So the first chart, this is coming from, done quite some time ago by Tyag Chaitanya. And this is the 6 stages of how a society degrades. And we in Kali Yuga are seeing it firsthand now. It's like what's in front of us wherever we turn. On the back side, I put in some information that's a little unusual. It's information coming from, I found it on the internet. It's information coming from sources trying to explain from historical evidence what actually occurred at Kurukshetra during the battle. Some of it's in the form of charts, some of the print's a little small, but I put it in any way of the major events on the 18 days of the confrontation. And I think it's a little interesting because we'll be taking a particular angle of vision today. Today will be a historical background to this chapter. All right? And then you have mini versions or reduced A4 size versions of the larger charts. So you find it handy. Like some of you may not find it so comfortable to carry A3 paper around. So part of your study packet includes this chart. And these charts are mind maps. And the first one's the overview of all 46 slokas. And the rest are icons, as on your cell phone or your computer, with a highlighted word prominently shown, so that we have what we call a walk through the book. We walk through the chapter by just saying the words, like stepping stones. Because if you know that, you could very quickly scan and get the essence in a short period of time. So everybody clear on your packets? Okay? All right. Now today's objectives and tomorrow's I will state simply. Today we'll be going through our charts and filling out the materials. I think you were all provided with a pen as well. Did you all get a pen? Make sure we have facilitators here helping. So you'll need a pen, and we'll be actually filling in your, you can call it a lab report, you can call it a program guide, whatever suits your fancy, or a parikrama guide. All right, you fill it in, and this is a handy reference for you. It also provides a model. So if you ever have to do a presentation or a paper, what would be nice things to include? You can use this as a sample model. All right? Today we're focusing on the historical background of the encounter and on evidence, because devotees often gloss over this chapter and they start with chapter 2, you're not the body, when they're preaching, right? And because people can't relate to these names and who are the Kauravas and who are the Pandavas. And perhaps even more discouraging, many people say, oh, that's just mythology. So what will a devotee say to such a thing? And today we'll be focusing on what you can say when you're confronted with that. Well, wait a minute. There's evidence, and it's not just our belief, it's not our faith. This is evidence coming from outside, people who are engaged in devotional practice, and they can verify by findings, by research, by data, by astrological calculation. They can verify the Mahabharata is correct. Kurukshetra is a place, it was a war, and there is a personality called Krishna. Right? These are people who say, oh, he's just a myth. So we'll be looking at that and helping you counter such arguments. At least you should be able to present the evidence, and there's plenty of it. Okay? So today will be that, and tomorrow the slides will take us into the chapter, because once you have the philosophical background, we'll be going into the chapter, and I think perhaps with a greater appreciation of why Arjuna felt trepidation. You know, we see the black and white on paper, and it's theoretical. But when you realize the body count and the number of people who were killed in 18 days, it was pretty horrifying. So sometimes we don't realize, the reality. And what great personalities these warriors were. So everybody ready now? Okay. So now I'll stand so we can begin. All right. Abai's going to take us into our folders first. And the first thing on your study packet is the objectives. All right. So I have a hard time. It's called old age. On your study packet, you see that there are 3 kinds of objectives, right? You see them? One is called knowledge, one is called skills, and the other one is called values. All right, what are they called? Knowledge, skills, and values. And this is also presented in the Bhakti Shastri Study Guide. This information, everything we're doing here can be referenced to study guides in our society. Knowledge would be the sambandha, and the skills would be abhideya, what's the process, and values would be prayojana, what's the change of heart. So those 3 objectives have to be there in our process, and as of today. So let us now go to our series of slides on objectives. You have those, Abai, that folder, instructional objectives? Okay. Because we're going to step in and out of the study bank and take a look at slides that bring it more to life for you. All right, the first thing, and many of these are built-in skills, built-in tips for you to use. The first thing you do when you study is you organize your information, right? When you cook, you put things out. When you do the deities, you put things out. When you put them away, you put things in folders. So in computers, if you have computers, you're familiar with that, folders for information. Otherwise, it's a string of lists, and it takes you forever to find something, and often you may not or give up. So the file system is applicable to how we present information by folders. Everybody clear on that one? And you see, if you go to a business or an office, they've got the file drawers out there and they pull everything out. Or now it's all on computer. Everything's software. Okay, next slide. This is our point for today. Where does chapter 1 in the Bhagavad Gita fit in 18 chapters? Why is it important? This slide will help you explain that if someone asks that question. If you study literature, particularly drama, any narrative must have 3 major components. Any narrative. Of course it has a title, a subject, right? So that's there. But it must have setting. What does it have? Setting. It has to have conflict. What? Conflict. And it also has resolution. That's the solution, right? You have to have a problem, and there has to be an answer. So if you think about the whole Bhagavad Gita, that formula fits. And chapter 1 is the first part. It is the setting to the entire 18 chapters. Without it, if somebody just starts speaking about philosophy, for what reason? Okay? And let us take a look at how setting breaks down. It breaks down into 2 items. Any writer knows this. Any book you pick up follows this. It has to have a place, right? Something has to happen somewhere. Right now we are in this place. And it has to have characters, or what's happening, personalities. And there's a further subdivision, which I couldn't fit in this slide. The characters are of 2 kinds. Now, from chapter 16, what are the 2 kinds? Divine and demoniac. That is standard even in material literature. You pick up any book, and there's the protagonist, he's the hero. And there's the antagonist, and he is the villain, right? Or the person against the better forces. So here we have characters, and the Pandavas, what do they represent? What do they represent? Right, the good, the divine qualities, right? Godly. And the Kauravas, what do they represent? Right, the demoniac qualities. Okay, so everybody follow that? So this chapter is called Setting the Scene. It's not just something that was thrown in. It's important. It's part of the formula. Okay? And at the end, the conflict now is interesting. It's obviously a war, fratricidal too, among family members. That's not a good idea. But on top of that, the subtle level, right? The subtle level is the internal conflict that Arjuna is facing. What is right and what is wrong? what is righteous and what is sin. So that is why the whole Bhagavad Gita, he turns to Krishna for the answer. And at the end, the solution is, what does Arjuna do? He agrees to fight. But not just blindly, on solid philosophical principles, willingly. Okay? So obviously Krishna's arguments were effective. So everybody understand this point? All right. So do you all know the parts now? What's your first part? You have to have what? Setting. Yeah, you have a setting with two kinds of what? Characters and a place. Right. Place and two kinds of characters. And you have to have what in every narration? Conflict. Have you ever noticed life is like that? Right? Ever go through a day and there's not a problem? Try it. And the last thing, you have to do what? Right. So part of our process here is to train you to be critical thinkers. Because the solution will have to come for us from Shastra or the spiritual master, right? Otherwise, it'll be dictated by the material energy and you will be wrong. Okay, next slide. These are the 6 thinking words. These are very important because if you're a writer, again, this is coming from narrative writing, every opening to a good narration answers these 6 questions. And what are they? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. And if you're asking a question, you should ask those 6. Then you will have a complete picture. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Any person who studies journalism has to have those 6 points in the first paragraph. First paragraph. And if you read purports, or you read Bhagavatam, introductory sections, you can find almost all 6 points there. Prabhupada said this is a good way to analyze. Okay, we're not making it up. Prabhupada follows the formula. Bhagavatam follows the formula. Writers follow the formula. So it's good for you to know. That makes you smart students. You know right away what to look for. Okay, next. And here you have Prabhupada. He said that, explain a topic from many perspectives. And if you ask, he mentions those 6 words. You will understand it. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. That nice little girl back there, and she's saying that. Good girl. Okay, next slide. And here, it doesn't matter whether you're asking or telling. Those are what we call pivotal words. They apply in both directions. Next. Next slide. It's a good study skill. If you're not clear as to what a purport contains, this is a sort of a trick. Take the first sentence of a purport or paragraph, turn it into a question, and you can make your own question bank. You can do that. And the questions you get in an exam, that's pretty much what the instructor did. They'll take a statement and they turn it into an answer, a question. So here we have an example from Bhagavad Gita 1. The question is, and Prabhupada elaborates in his purport, he does that in his purports. What's Dhritarashtra's fear? He doesn't want to compromise, right? He wants to be totally victorious. So simple, keep it simple, but you'll see purports won't be so difficult to read. Right? Just turn them into questions. Take a statement, turn it into a question. All right, next. And here's your values. In that same purport, Prabhupada is quoting, not himself, he's quoting Gita Mahatmya. And what does he say? One should what? Read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly. All right? So we ask ourselves, nobody's going to grade you. Am I trying to do that? And we use a number system, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's our checklist. Am I glossing over it, or am I finding no interest in it, or whatever? But Prabhupada's instruction is very scrutinizingly, and he's referring to the Gita Mahatmya. Right? Never means I don't try to study carefully. 5 means I always try. So today, we're trying to do that, right? We're trying to be scrutinizing in how we go about our study and giving you the tools to help you do that, all right? Empowering. All right, next. So we're back now to things we want to learn, basics. Chapter 18. Look at what else is 18 related to this chapter. How long did the war last? 18 days. How many Akshahinis were there? 18. And do you know what the breakdown was? 11 and 7. Yeah, 11 and 7. The Pandavas were outnumbered. They were outnumbered in every way. Outnumbered. 11 and 7. 18. How many books in the Mahabharata? 18. Interesting. So now you know 18, 18, 18, 18. Chapters, days, divisions, and books. Okay, next. And one thing that's coming up, these are just preliminaries of things we want to know, but these are the transcendental kanchas. They're not just ordinary. The sound was just shattering the hearts of the opposition. When they heard the sounds, they knew they were defeated. Right then, hearts were shattered. So here, Krishna's is what? Panchajanya, and Arjuna was? Devadatta, and Bhima the Pondra. Now these slides, by the way, we share them. We've made them for devotees. If you have pen drives or hard drives, you're welcome. You know, I pass them on. If you have classes or you yourself want to have your own information, you can refer to them for study or preaching. How about now Yudhisthira? What's his? Anantavijaya and Nakula, Sughosha and Sahadev, Mani Pushpaka. All right, and again, they're not ordinary. In the spiritual world, everything's conscious, everything's a personality. Tables, chairs, that's why we have to be pure to be there. If you're in the spiritual world and you're thinking something bad, even the table will know it. So we'll find out these kanchas. We'll be seeing a picture of Krishna's Panchajanya in a little bit. Okay, next. In this chapter, there are 4 subdivisions to Arjuna's doubts. He has 4 main reasons why he's hesitant, right? There are like 4 million people there gathered to fight to the death. And he has doubts. So we have here, let's hit the key words. The first word was what? Compassion. Compassion. And sometimes I just do a little symbol. What's your first one? Compassion. Compassion. The second one was gain and happiness. Yeah, how can I be happy with all my friends gone? The third one is what? Fear of sinful reaction, right? I'm killing not just any ordinary people, I'm killing gurus, teachers, great personalities. These are not ordinary people on the battlefield. And the fear of the next one was that one. Yeah, destroying a whole dynasty. That means my reaction is reaching into the future and the past. It's reaching into the future because the progeny will become less able, if they're unwanted, to engage in the Varnashram system. It's reaching into the past because the forefathers are not given oblations which release them from hellish situations. So he's not just committing a sin for here and now. He's committing a sin that has unimaginable reactions. Okay, everybody got those 4 points? First one was what? Compassion. You should know these. Compassion, the next one was what? Yeah, I don't want to gain anything. Happiness, what am I going to gain? And what's the third one? Fear of sinful reaction. That's just the sin of killing a teacher or a friend or relative. Okay, but what's worse? I am responsible for destroying a dynasty. A whole dynasty. Okay, everybody got those 4? All right. These are preliminaries because when we go through the whole thing tomorrow, you already are oriented and you can assimilate. It's easy then. All right, next. All right, these are the 6 kinds of aggressors that by Vedic code, any ordinary person would not be getting a sinful reaction. Okay, so let's see the key word. Remember, we always compress. Poison. What's the first? Yeah, poison. Fire. Weapons. Right? Deadly weapons. How about this one? Plunders. The next one? Land. Right. Someone's taking land. And what's the last one? Wife. Kidnaps a wife. All those happen to the Pandavas. All 6. Okay. So again, poison, fire, deadly weapons, plunders, occupies land, and the last one is wife. Okay. So that way it compresses it and you know what you're faced with. Okay, your next slide. This is from our chart, which you have in your appendix. This is the sequence that brings us to present-day society. And here's how it happens. First, the superiors are what? They're killed, right? That's the destruction of the dynasty. Then what happens when they're gone? Right, your religion says, right, Vedic rituals will stop. This isn't a family. What happens if the parents are deceased and the child's an orphan? Who's going to teach him? Right? Nobody. He's an orphan. Third, then what happens? Irreligion starts to predominate. If you don't know what's religion, you are forced to follow irreligious principles by nature. What's next? If the women become polluted, that's really because women are the ones who bear the generations for the future. And if the progeny are not good, then the whole society becomes overburdened with an unfavorable population. So then you have number 5, and what's the result? Varna Shankara. Today, look at that. I mean, all over the place, unwanted people, unwanted children. They don't even make it out of the womb anymore. And then the last thing, what happens? Kinds of community projects are destroyed, family welfare activities, and you have chaos, and even worse, war, pestilence, reactions. It's very heavy. Okay? You got those 6 now? And if you look around, Kali Yuga is exemplary in all 6. All right? Okay, next. Is that it? That's it for that section. Okay, everybody able to follow what we do? Okay, that gives you sort of the preliminary information, like the chapter, important facts. Okay, so now let us go in and start filling in our charts. Ready? And it might sound a little babyish at first, but actually you'll be surprised if you start questioning very many people in India who are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, but if you start to get technical, they may not even be able to answer stage 1. And there are even some devotees who may not. So we want to make sure everybody here at least has stage 1. Ready? What's the title of this book, this chapter? Okay, so you can just put a little code there, like observing A, put just a code, observing the armies. All right. And in the section, and I'll start writing here also on my iPad so you can see it on a little screen. Okay, we use codes a lot. So you can say observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, if you want to do that. Right? You don't have to write everything out. Then the next thing is, which section do I find this in? Now this is pretty simple. You're in the first chapter and the first section. And this is called Karma Yoga. This constitutes 6 chapters. All the 3 parts of the Gita are 6 chapters in size. Okay? Then the last thing is, how big is this chapter, right? So this chapter, in our classes when we go, we always attach the size. So I would say chapter 1 has 46, okay? It has 46 verses. And someone say, why is that important? Well, it is important so you know how important the items are. Some chapters are large because they're summaries of everything. 46, then we always have a backup, right? If your power goes off, what do? You turn off the generator, right? So when we study, we have a backup. Oh, if I forget that number, what's another trick? So one way to remember that number, if I think of 46, is Sanskrit alphabet, right? Okay. Just think of something else. It doesn't even have to be that related, but just something else. If I forget a number, I have a backup memory anchor. Okay, so it has 46 slokas. That's stage 1. Now let's go to stage 2. And we see here, what's the structure of this chapter? That means how many main topics are in here? Okay? So we find 1, 2, 3, how many? 4. We find 1, 2, 3, 4 topics. Now right now, some of you, if you've studied Bhakti Shastri, you come to classes regularly, you may know. But there may be many people here who aren't familiar of how big they are, what they are, number 2, how big they are, and where they are. So this is to help you get your folder system. You understand the point? You put things in a folder, you'll actually know what the information is and where I can find it. All right, so you have 4, and we're going to put a symbol for topic title, PW. For your first one, just put PW. And that stands for preparing for the war, preparations for the war. That first section is offers preparations for the war. You'll get that information. The second, SV, the second section deals with the signs of victory. That the Pandavas, despite the smaller army, are going to win. And there's signs for that. And we're going to learn those. There's 6 of them, not just a few, 6 signs that they will be victorious. And that's in that section. In the 3rd section, you put a K over BV. Krishna is introduced. He comes into this section, and he's known as Bhaktavatsal. He is the servant of his servant. Okay, dearmost servant. He sets the example of being a perfect servant. Okay, Krishna's Bhaktavatsal. And the final one, put an A with a big question mark. Arjuna is hesitant to fight. Reluctant. He's refusing. Okay, got it? Arjuna's doubts. So everybody got the 4? Preparing for the war. Then sections, signs of victory, who's going to win. 3rd, Krishna's Bhaktavatsal. And the last section is Arjuna's doubts. Let's see how far they go now. Now this is getting more advanced. Remember, this is 2nd grade math. A little bit harder than 1st grade math. Okay. First one goes from 1 to 13. So write that in. These first, and you'll see on your charts, you'll see numbers on the side. Right? You'll see 13, 7, 7, and 19. Those big numbers will tell you how big these sections are. Okay? So first 13 slokas are the preparation for the war. And even that can be broken down. Okay? The next section starts with 14, and it concludes with the 20th sloka. The signs of victory are here. You can find those there. And they're explained more thoroughly in the purport. Okay? From 21 to 20 through 27, we hear now, why is Krishna addressed as Bhaktavatsal? What makes... He comes in at this chapter. He doesn't start at the beginning, and he only speaks 1 sloka in this chapter. Only 1. He's waiting until Arjuna surrenders as a disciple to say more. He's thinking a lot, but he doesn't say much. All right, from 21 to 27, we have what? Krishna as Bhaktavatsal. From the 28th sloka to the end of this chapter, we have what? Arjuna's 4 major doubts. The reasons he doesn't want to fight. Okay. So we should know those, right? We talked about those before, right? Compassion, happiness, fear of sin, and destroying a whole dynasty. Those were his 4 main reasons. So those occur in these slokas, 28 through 46. Okay, everybody got your folder system set up now? You know, does this help you? Okay, because see, the thing is now, if you hear slokas one at a time, you may miss a day or 2, or you may not really know where you are. But this helps you put everything into the mental compartments. Okay, everybody able to picture the chapter a little more clearly now? All right. Those of you who come to our classes, they're already expert at this, but generally people may not be so familiar with the process. All right, now we wanted to know, we've got the size, and you can put above the numbers. You have that on the chart, 13, 7, 7, and 19. That's how big it is, but the section will tell you where. I often give the analogy, you may have 20 rupees, but where is it, in your pocket or on the table? Right, where is it? If I need 20 rupees, where will I find it? So this will be tell you the where, size, and location. All right, and here now we have topic 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't know that we're going to take the time to fill all that in, but in the charts, that will enable you with the keyword. If you turn to your charts, where the icons are in the back, let's see if you can find that. On the very back, start with number 1. We'll just do a few just to give you the example. We won't do all 46 because we have much information we want to cover about the evidence as to why the Mahabharata War, the Kurukshetra War took place, and to be able to address that question if you're challenged. Okay? So you have your number 1 icon. What's the word? Kurukshetra. Now, it doesn't have to be that word. I go through it, but I try to find what we call in education a trigger word. It means it brings out the rest of the information. It's a word that perhaps is unique to that verse, or it's an important word, or it's different. It helps distinguish that verse from others. So Kurukshetra right well tells us the place, right? And let's just do a couple. What's number 2? Duryodhana. Number 2. Okay. And what about number 3? Teacher. Okay, he addresses his teacher. Okay? So if you can take the first letter of that word, remember compress. That's what the whole computer industry does. It keeps getting smaller and smaller. You can wear computers on a wristband now that used to fill up huge rooms. They're making things more compressed. Okay? So do that when you study. So let's try, go back to your chart, and on topic 1 you have 13 verses, so you can put K on the first line, and then the second one was D, and then the next one was teacher, right? And you don't have to write the whole word in, but you have room to if you want to later. So this is sort of your walkthrough. You can walk through all 46 verses like that. We won't take the time to do that today because we have much else we want to cover. Okay, everybody clear on that? You got it? All right. I think we should now probably go into our trip. We're going to take a trip. And we're going to go to a very important place. We're going to go to Kurukshetra. Everybody want to go? All right. We're going to be presenting 4 folders now, slides, that are evidence that this Kurukshetra war was a reality. And the first one will be that the first proof is there is a present site. And at that present site, there are many historical references, not only recent, but in the past. Okay. The second folder will take us into Dwarka. Now, why Dwarka? We're not talking about Dwarka. But Dwarka, recent excavations or discoveries under the water have proven that the city of Dwarka is there. The covered city is there. So we want to be able to refer to that. Well, wait a minute. Krishna is mentioned as being at Dwarka. It's there. So he must have been there. That's stated in the Bhagavatam, right? This is proof that Krishna was a person. If he was at Kurukshetra, he's speaking the Gita, someone say, yeah, but he's a myth. Well, wait a minute. Right? Okay, so this is our first slide. This is going to be our historical evidence, not just the devotee blind faith. No, this is from outsiders who could give evidence that this place is real, what happened there was real, Krishna is a real person, the Mahabharata can be verified. You have to know these things. Otherwise, how would you face the challenge? Okay? Historical review. So now we're looking into our first folder, and I think the last one we're giving is astrological. That is the most compelling. Astrological science. This whole world now places faith not in God, but in the scientist. So even if astrological findings can verify the time, the place, the Mahabharata, the calculations, how can we openly dismiss this as being just myth? Okay, everybody ready for those 4 series? So we're going to take a walk through and take a look at those 4, because this is interesting. All right, so let's start our pilgrimage. Okay. Ready? First folder, first slide, right. Remember we told you we put things in folders. So now we're going to take a look at ancient charts, the Kuru and the Panchala dynasty, the Kurus and the Panchalas, history. And of course, if we go to Kurukshetra, you will see this bronze figure there. I've never been there, but I've done my best to research. If I'm making a mistake, don't hesitate to correct us. And again, I couldn't always get a reference for a picture, because sometimes if you download, they'll put many pictures in there, and it may not be exactly that site. So, but that red soil, I know from devotees who've said in the past the soil is red. Now, may not so be that now, but they remember that. Okay, next slide. I'll try to explain these. It's always good in a map to get up in an airplane and know where you are. So here we can see, in terms of India, there's Kurukshetra, right? 100 miles north of Delhi in the present state of Haryana. So you know where it is. And there it is. There's a place like that right now. Okay, it's not as though it is. Now, this is listed in an essay by Lokanath Maharaj, and he describes briefly these 11 major sites of historic interest. This is from the past. I couldn't find slides for everything, but I did my best if I could find a painting. I could not get enough information to get pictures for all these places of what exists there now, so you could see it now and know what was there before. So we're going to take a look at the what? Saraswati River, right? And then we're going to go to Jyotisar, and then what? Brahm Sarovara, and then we're going to go to Samanpanchika. Now that was the 5 lakes, but they all have different names now. And another place called Banganga. There's another one, Banganga, where Arjuna shot the arrow and they fed the horses, but I couldn't find verifiable pictures. I saw pictures, but I couldn't be sure. And Karnavada, what's that? You know what that is? Karna's wheel gets trapped in the mud. All right, and we're going to go to Harsvarajapani. Yeah, right, that's where Duryodhana hid. And when he came out, he was being challenged by the Pandavas. And Pehau, that's a little town now, and that used to be called something else, Prithu Dak. And King Prithu would there offer oblations to his father there. And Chakravyuha, I wanted so much to find a picture of that with the famous formation of the chakras that Abhimanyu entered and could not exit. And the final place is Dadichi Tirtha, and that is where actually Dadichi gave his bones so that Indra could construct his thunderbolt. So there's not just related with the historic Kurukshetra war, but there's much ancient history in that site. Much. I think in one source I read there were over 360 in that era, 360 holy places to visit. And many of them give great benedictions. A bath in Brahmasarovara relieves one of sin, and it's worth the Ashwamedha sacrifice. Okay? All right, next. There's another picture of the land there. What we see today. Next. Here's the first item, the Saraswati and the Drishtavati rivers. And you see here where they join. Can you show us there? That is the place of the battle. Saraswati River is also questioned. So you'll see, wait a minute, it's mentioned in the Rig Veda, and its origin is shown up there because it's a lost river. Cataclysmic effect stopped the course of the river, and the whole civilization here had to shift east. They didn't have water. But it's in the Vedas, and it was a forceful river. Forceful river. Now they say, well, it didn't exist. Wait a minute. And in Adi Badri, that is the origin of it up there. Okay, next. Jyotisar, if anybody's been there, that is the site. We just celebrated on Monday, by recitation, the anniversary of the Bhagavad Gita. And the tree there is the living witness, 5,000-year-old tree of having heard the Gita from Krishna directly. And you'll see here Jyotisar, again, where we are in the Haryana state, where Delhi is. And I think it's about 100 kilometers north of Delhi, like that. Kurukshetra, Jyotisar. It's a little bit away from the actual place of the fighting. And that was on a Tuesday morning, from what I find. Krishna spoke it in the morning that day. Arjuna's down, like that. Okay, next. And this is Brahmasarovar. This is the hugest tank, one of the biggest tanks in the world. It's the size of 5 football stadiums put together, pretty big. And that place, you see Lord Brahma, according to history, we're going really back, is where he created the universe. And you'll see Brahmasarovar there. Many pilgrims go there. And again, offering often oblations to the forefathers. They'll travel there for that reason. Next. And Samanpanchika, this one is a particular one site, but I wasn't positive. So I gave the general name when Parsuram killed the warriors there in that area 21 times. 5 lakes of blood were created, and they later turned into lakes. So that name Samantapanchika is coming from that history. He also had schooled the Kauravas in warfare, and it is said at the end of Kali Yuga, he will come and be the military instructor for Kalki. He will come back. Okay, next. King Prithu. It's called Prithu Dak. That was the name of the area. Now the town is called Pehau. A little village there, a little town. And that's where he offered sacrifice for his father there. So King Venu was spared by the mercy of his son. And next. And Banganga, this is the place where Bhishma makes a request for water. And Arjuna shoots the arrow in the ground, and that you'll see that Banganga, that little site there. So if you go, it's today and before in the painting. And he's giving instructions to Yudhisthira on Dharma for his reign of the kingdom. Next. Karnavada, this is where the wheel got stuck, and Karna's pleading for a pause, and Arjuna's ready to give it because he says, wait a minute. He didn't give Abhimanyu any mercy. So that was the end where he lost his life. Chariot wheel got stuck. I tried to find pictures of the trench. I couldn't. Next. And here, Parsara Dwapain, where Duryodhana hid. This is the lake where Parsara had his ashram. And Bhima comes out. And he comes out, and Bhima engages him in battle. And that's when he defeats him there in the battle. Next. Chakravyuha Abhimanyu. Only 16-year-old Prabhupada said, what warriors they were. At 16, he could kill a whole Lakshakini. Pretty amazing. 16, a whole Lakshakini. And he was surrounded and fairly vanquished. He knew how to get in, but he didn't know how to get out. He knew how to get out. Okay, next. And Indra, his thunderbolt from the Dadichi's ashram was at this place. Okay, Dadichi Tirtha. So these are all in the area, right? Is this all helpful? Getting an idea of what's there? I couldn't find always actual pictures, but at least you give some idea of the importance. This place has Prabhupada mentions in the purport, has historical and Vedic importance. So we wanted you to have a little understanding of what's there if you don't get there personally. Is that the end of that series? Oh no, Arjuna slays Jayadratha. All right, this is famous. Krishna puts up the chakra to block the sunset. So they think the day is over, but it isn't. And Arjuna, at that point, he retaliates. Jayadratha had been not merciful in killing Abhimanyu, so Arjuna retaliated. This is very important because people say, everybody's smiling for devotees, Radharani, everything's Radharani. Listen, the mood of separation at Kurukshetra is higher than in Vrindavan. And some acharyas say it's just the height of mood of separation there. So that is where Krishna comes in a chariot, and the gopis and the gopas come by cart. So that is the beginning of the chariots, the festival of chariots. That's what that symbolizes. Kurukshetra is the reunion of Krishna with the residents of Vrindavan. That's explained in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. So every time you see festival of chariots, you should be thinking of what? Kurukshetra. That's what it's glorifying. And Prabhupada, in one lecture, he says, the Sahajas say, what's this Kurukshetra and battlefield? You don't need to know that. This is the height of Madhurya Rasa here. So why do we have Rath Yatras? To celebrate Kurukshetra. And here's the most important thing for us as devotees, that Srila Prabhupada met Srimati Morarji, where? Kurukshetra. We have the Bhagavad Gita because of that meeting. Pretty amazing, huh? He met her there. She walked up to him. She offered her respects. She saw he was a saintly man. He was chanting. And later she made it possible Prabhupada's coming to America on the ship. So that's history, our history. Why are we're here because of that. Okay, that's pretty much it. These boulders. Okay, Dwarka excavation. We're going to go through these quickly because we're going to be seeing a movie. So this is just, we're going to run through these slides quickly. This is a movie you're going to see tomorrow. We're going to show you films that you can also watch. These are part of the packets. Current proof. And truth, again, is not for all men, but those who seek it. Because a lot of people do not live a life of truth. They don't know what is truth. Okay, next. Dwarka. You see those two islands there? Those are underneath the ground, and they're both the size of Manhattan. Manhattan. That's how the size of Dwarka. Okay, next. This man in the center is R.K. Rao, and he's the head of the research that went on there. And I feel sad when I look at this picture because as I watch the video, and you'll see it tomorrow, he disappeared. And his successor disappeared, and all the people on the team quit. And there's a big mystery as to why he disappeared, what happened, and why the government banned any more excavations. So, not so nice. Huh? And he's famous historian, not just an ordinary man. Okay, next slide. There he is. These excavations were done in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, and then the government said no more, banned them. So that's him there with some of the divers. You'll see some pictures. We'll just go through the pictures quickly. There's Dwarka, but below they have evidence of the two major islands. And Bet Dwarka curves around, and all the excavations, because all that was land there in the center, which is a bay now, that's where the excavations took place, where they had found more information, more of the relics. Next. And that's a picture of the boat. Going back now 30, 40 years. Okay. Next. And underneath, looking for the lost city. He was convinced it was there. And you see they've got these rulers underneath, so you can see comparative size, so they know when they can't bring up relics. They can see by pictures how big these items are. These are huge, huge stones, formations of gates and doors and so many items. Like there are walls. Go ahead, and you find more information there. Next, and doing his research underwater. Next. Look at the size of that wall. Next. Anchors that they found, they brought these up. Iron anchors, stone anchors actually, stone anchors. This was a big shipping port. Okay, next. Again, stone anchors. Huge, huge item. Next. Bronze bells. And these can be carbon dated too. They go back a long time. This is adorable. How it's intact. A little bronze chariot. So sweet, huh? And a coin. In the movie we're going to see today, I don't know if it's part of the clip we have, but they found coins in Afghanistan that have Krishna on one side and Balaram on the other. Just to show you the influence around the world of Krishna. He's not an ordinary person. Okay, and this is a devotee. The movie we're going to see tomorrow, I know the devotees made it. The man who's speaking doesn't say it, but he's interviewing Michael Cremo. Okay. And his history, and you'll, there are just too many. You see a gate, and it's because it said Prabhupada on the gate, so they've slipped in a lot of Krishna consciousness. This is Dr. Narhari Acharya. Now we're going into astrological proof, and this is the most compelling, because you cannot argue with against today's science. They accept science. So he's from America. He's at the University of Memphis in Tennessee, and he's the foremost authority on the astrological statistics in the Mahabharata. He took 141 references and used software that can create the sky at the time cited. And he can prove the date and the time of the Kurukshetra war. Okay? So he calculated between these two dates. He found 137 times when there's certain conjunctions. And then he kept reducing it. He compared star patterns, Mars, Saturn, and he was using references from two books of the Mahabharata, the Yoga Parva and the Bhishma Parva. And also fiery comets. There was not one, there were two fiery comets at that time, which were very inauspicious. Comets are not auspicious, and there were two at the same time. Usually they signal horrible events. Next. And these are just rocks that, obviously broke away and came down as fiery comets. Okay, you'll see some more pictures. Go ahead and buy. And they're coming. Okay, next. Two comets. Two, very inauspicious. Saturn was at Aldebaran, and that even historically shown. Every time that happened, some horrible catastrophic event. And there it is here, Aldebaran, and Saturn is coming into that position. Saturn is usually considered an unfavorable planet. And Mars, the next one, Mars, we'll see that was in Antares. Okay. And those combination starts to really make it foreboding. Next. And then he was taking lunar, waxing and waning of the moon, because he kept reducing. When was it? He'd have to eliminate one factor. That's what they do in science, eliminate your variables. So he kept saying, well, now what are the waxing and waning periods of the moon? Okay, next. And he calculated there were two options, 2183 BC and 3067 BC. And he finally concluded it was 3067 BC because the Bart had said, that the war ended at the waxing stage of the moon. So he used that, and that was the date he pinpointed. He used astrology. He wasn't just, guessing. Okay, next. And that was the date he pinpointed. Okay, and the stars, I can't remember what the position was with Pleiades. I don't know much astrology, but I'm just quoting what I've picked up from the pictures and the text. Next. And this is interesting. This was the day the Twin Towers fell. The configuration was the same. They calculated it was in September 2001, and Saturn and Mars were in the same position. So it's just this proves that he's not wrong. Right? that this was inauspicious, two fiery configurations like that. And this is a devotee also, Sadaputta, and he's also departed. But he wrote many books on Vedic astrology. Great, great, great soul. Next. I think that's it. Okay, now we're going to quickly take a look at our final one, the Mahabharata. Now you have on your papers, let's turn a little bit to what evidence we can find in the Mahabharata that can help us understand how Arjuna felt. Because it's just too easy to read text. But you have to know what he's facing. So you got your little charts in there? Okay, let's go quickly to that. So you have here, it's a nice handy little reference for you to keep. The date of the war, well, they say unknown, because different references will say different things. But Kurukshetra and the results, and you'll see who were the leaders, Yudhisthira and Duryodhana, you'll get that, who were the commanders-in-chief. And the devotees on the Pandava side won. Drishtadyumna survived the whole thing until the last day, and he was killed. But they went, the Kauravas went through Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Shalya, and Ashvatthama. He survived. So the casualties, you get different numbers. Prabhupada lectures say 64 crore. But according to, if they calculate the size of the Akshahinis, it's about 3.9 million people died in 18 days. That's pretty heavy. 3.9 million people in 18 days in one area. That's intense. It's considered the bloodiest battle in history. Bloodiest battle. It's not a small thing. Arjuna, you have to understand, why is he hesitant to fight? You can just start reading the book, read the chapters, say the slokas, but this starts to bring it to understanding, level of understanding. Okay? Belligerence, you'll see why, there's strength. Here's interesting, these different formations, they're all explained. The devotees often know, this one over here, they know the Chakravyuha, but there were quite a few listed, and some were defensive and some were offensive. So you'll see some are like Padma, crocodile, tortoise, lotus, eagle, ocean, mala, needle, so many, crescent. There are many, many formations, and they would use them, and then the opposition would have to try to break those formations because they'd be used either for aggression or to protect someone. So the Chakravyuha was the most difficult one. It's like a maze. To get inside, you have to go inside, 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 like that. Okay, and on the other side, it's interesting to know, before the war, the leaders got together and decided the rules of etiquette in fighting. They just didn't drop bombs on populations the way they do now. They had to fight, and they, between sunrise and sunset, and single warriors had to be same weapon, same kind of conveyance. And they couldn't, if someone was a surrendered person, a widow, a woman, someone who didn't want to fight, they couldn't just kill them. I mean, there was an etiquette to this. And then certain weapons had certain rules, like maces could not be used below the waist, and no unfair warfare. Of course, on the 14th day, all rules were broken. They just killed each other off. It got really bad. After the third day, it was pretty bad from that point on. First day, the Kauravas, the most, it was by body count. They were not fighting for territory. The most dead. Okay, so the first day, most Pandavas were killed. Second day, most Kauravas. And then after that, it just gets heavier and heavier and heavier. You can imagine. There's just some drawings or paintings of the, can you imagine all those people packed together like that? It's hard to picture. Okay, next. And here you have, it's hard to read it, but this is a little summary I found in one site, so I just put it in there. Just summary statements on, you know, the day. Important ones for us to know would maybe be the day Bhishma, on the 10th day, you know, the arrows struck him and then he fell away. And Abhimanyu on the 13th day, he broke into the Chakravyuha, couldn't get out. And then the sad one is the last day when they went in at night. And they, not only, it wasn't just the 5 sons of the Pandavas, but they killed everybody. Drishtadyumna, Shikandi, everybody. They finished it off. They went in at night. And that was against the rules of etiquette. So that's called the night of shame. Okay? So now you've got your little packets there. And I think we have time now. Is that, the end of the, oh yeah. At the end of the war, guess who blew the trumpet? Who blew the conch? Krishna. Yeah, the blue boy blew the conch, the end of the war. And there's the statistics, go back. 3.9 million and 12 survivors. Some were, most of the Pandavas, Krishna, and Satyaki. And then on the other side, I think it was Kritavarma and Kripa. Yuyutsu was on the Pandava side. But you have a list there you can refer to. It's handy little thing. Small, but handy. 12 survivors. This is carrying that dead heroes back to Hastinapur after the war. And the last one? Yeah, of course, what happens then, of course, after the kingdom has been handed over, then when Parikshit takes over, the 5 Pandavas leave, they retire. Draupadi also tries to follow, and Yudhishthira is the only one who survives, and he's entering the heavens. He's invited by Dharma to enter as immortal, so Yudhishthira. Okay, so you got a little bit of a summary of the history there. Okay, now a little bit of the astrological one. Oh, we saw that already. This is the end, right? So we have time for a little bit of the movie. Everybody ready for that? Nobody's, we're running over time a little bit, but we just have some clips. I hope this is helping you mostly to get a feeling for why Arjuna in verse 46 doesn't want to fight. Okay, we're going to go back a little bit now on this. And I think this is one section that we don't want. We're going to start at about 12, just before this one, in which the person who made this film the question of the film is Krishna history or myth? Because some people totally discount it. So this film provides historical reference proof. Whether you want to say he was God, whether you want to say he was divine, maybe that's moot or questionable for an individual. But that he did not exist, that is not possible. There's definitely a personality there and all kinds of proof of that. Okay? Yeah. Can you turn the volume up a little bit? Can you all hear all right? It's not, can you put the microphone or this closer to it? Because the thing is, the narrator's accent is very British, so sometimes it's a little hard to. And he's giving evidence from so many sites: the Mahabharata, again from astrology, from Dwarka, from coins found around the world, artifacts. Can you repeat it from the beginning, please? Yeah, you want to go back? Okay. It was like 12 minutes, 20 seconds, something like that. I had to, last minute, try to cut. I mean, the thing goes on for a good 20 minutes, which is a little long. If you want, we can try to watch most of it. It's interesting, yeah.
And the laptop doesn't working. It's working there. So volume we cannot open. So no, it's not working. The problem is there. So it's the volume from there.
Oh, the volume is coming from there and not from the laptop? So that's the loudest we can get it, even with the help of a mic? Can we put your mic over there? Okay, if everybody's really quiet, I'll try to fill in. Is that helpful?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we'll do, okay. All right, now hear how he's saying how Krishna performed amazing divine acts. Now at this point, he's saying how some question, did he ever exist? If you're all very quiet, and if you'd maybe even turn down the lights a little bit so people can see the screen.
To 57 centuries BC. The Bhagavad Gita
declares that Krishna is not just any god, but the Lord God, who descended on earth to protect the saints, annihilate the wicked, and to establish righteousness. Whenever the forces of evil rule the earth, I will incarnate myself to destroy the wicked, to protect the saints, and to establish righteousness in age after age. These are the words of Krishna as set down in the Bhagavad Gita. One of the best sources of evidence of Krishna is the Mahabharata, which dates from just before the Christian era. The critical edition of the Mahabharata lies at the Bandaka Oriental Research Institute at Pune in India. The Mahabharata consists of 18 books called Parvas, containing 100,000 verses. They describe a terrible war between the Pandavas, led by Krishna, and the evil Kauravas, in which 4 million soldiers are said to have perished in 18 days. The 100,000 Sanskrit verses of the Mahabharata were painstakingly transcribed from the Shada Codex by Dr. Subtanka and his team of scholars. But could such a war have taken place so long ago? And did Krishna really exist? Some of the key sites referred to in the Mahabharata are Hastinapur, the capital, Kurukshetra, where the war was fought, and Indraprastha, or Delhi as it is now called. Dr. Lal is probably India's best-known archaeologist who excavated Hastinapur over 60 years ago.
Two extremely divergent views about the historicity of the Mahabharata. According to one view, everything mentioned in the text is true to the very letter. Another view holds that it is the figment of the imagination of a poet called Vyas or many poets. Actually, all this confusion is because the text is not contemporary with the event.
That an advanced civilization did exist, at least as long ago as 1500 BC, is borne out by the discovery of various artifacts and a planned town by Dr. Lal and his team. Various artifacts, including earthenware, spearheads, and dice for gambling, were found at Hastinapur. Evidence of a great flood that destroyed Hastinapur was also found, which caused the capital to be shifted to Kausambi, as narrated in the epic. So, there are two very divergent views about the Mahabharata. One, that it is historically and factually accurate. The other, that it is pure fiction. Rajesh Purohit is one of the foremost authorities on the subject.
To understand the authenticity of what has been narrated in the Mahabharata, we made an exploration of the data that we have pertaining to the river Saraswati, which is again a controversial river, because most of the scholars believe that it was a mythical river. Interestingly, the data that we have today, it tells that it was a mighty river, virtually existed and produced a mighty civilization. We are coming across with both on the banks of river Saraswati on the north as well as on the south, the southern river, the Drishadvati river, antiquities almost pertaining to the time of Indus Valley civilization as well as pre-Indus Valley civilization. If you take the river's journey from the Himalaya to the Kutch or to the Arabian Sea, the journey is almost 1600 kilometers, and you are having 1200 archaeological sites all along the Saraswati. So these are important data which gives you an insight that you think twice before you say that Mahabharata is a myth.
In the years 1860 to 1870, Sir Alexander Cunningham, the first Surveyor General, explored Kurukshetra and identified 4 cardinal points setting out the boundaries of Kurukshetra, where 4 yakshas were enshrined in the past, which were the guardian deities to protect the Holy Land. The lack of inscriptions from this period can be explained by the fact that writing in India is believed to have only come into use after the arrival of Alexander in 325 BC, Rajesh Purohit again.
The Ashokan inscription is not talking about the Hindu tradition, the Hindu way of life, or the epic Mahabharata. It doesn't discuss anything about us. Ashoka's time is considered to be the time of a radical reformation from Hinduism to Buddhism.
Further supporting evidence comes from the discovery of coins dating from 172 BC. These were issued by the Indo-Greek ruler Ogothocles in present-day Afghanistan, which show Krishna on one side and Balarama on the other. In the 1850s, this column was discovered. It was erected by the Greek ruler Heliodorus in honor of Krishna. This has been dated to being from 113 BC. Further evidence is found in the later inscription of Pulakeshini II from Badami, and this calculates the date of the Mahabharata as 3131 BC. It is, however, the oral and living traditions in India which have preserved the Mahabharata for posterity in the original Sanskrit. This oral tradition of India is echoed by these ladies from Sakori, who are chanting the 1,000 names of Vishnu from the book of the Mahabharata in the original Sanskrit. Rajesh Purohit had this to say.
But in India, nobody knows how and why they adopted this kind of historical tradition. But I can say this much, because of this historical tradition of Shruti and Smriti, India could preserve a history which is living in nature, and there were
came across a 15th century BC
deeds that were recorded in the Mahabharata.
बदलने के लिए उनका सबका राक्षसों का नाश करने के लिए उनको यहाँ आना पड़ता है.
Legend even holds that this banyan tree was witness to the knowledge imparted by Krishna on the battlefield. Hundreds of miles away, the living tradition of India is reflected by these Hindus, who remember the Ganges river every sunset as a giver of life and a destroyer of sins, and worship it at Varanasi as part of their daily prayers, as they have done for thousands of years. In the blazing heat of the Indian summer, the yogi Shivnath performs remarkable acts of penance in honor of Krishna. Shivnath has decided to forego the pleasures of mundane life and come into the fold of sadhus. Shivnath's ancestors have done similar penances here. Traditionally, this has always been considered as the place which belonged to one of the heroes of the battle called Kara, as told in the Mahabharata. Ramprasad Birbal also lives here, finds many bones washed up from beneath the soil, and believes that these belong to the warriors who perished in the battle. This Hindu tradition extends across the whole of Southeast Asia, from Thailand, Cambodia and Laos, right up to Java, Bali and Indonesia. Celebration of this living tradition of worship to Krishna is found in the most unlikely places. Here, in a dance studio in Leeds, Devika Rao, a dancer, performs in honor of Krishna. S.R. Rao is India's foremost marine archaeologist.
when I demolished a modern building, some temple of Vishnu of 9th century came to light below the building. This prompted me to take further deeper excavation, and ultimately I came across a 15th century BC settlement.
The Mahabharata document describes a beautiful city called Dwarka that was built by Krishna and is said to have been devoured by the sea. Modern-day Dwarka lies off the western coast of Gujarat. And even today, people there celebrate the living tradition of Krishna worship. But what about Krishna's legendary city? Recently, marine archaeologists from the National Institute of Oceanography discovered an entire city under the western coast of Gujarat near Beit Dwarka. Dr. Rao and his team had finally found evidence that proved the existence of Krishna's city of Dwarka that was described as being flooded by ocean waters 36 years after the Mahabharata was written. Many artifacts of considerable antiquity were found from the ocean bed. This seal shows a bull, a unicorn, and a goat, and provides strong evidence for proof of the story from the Mahabharata, which says that it served as an identity badge for the citizens. Perhaps the most significant evidence supporting Krishna's existence comes from the astronomical references found in the texts of the Mahabharata. There are over 140 of these astronomical references. Dr. Nahari Archer is a professor of physics at the University of Memphis and the world's foremost researcher of the astronomical events described in the Mahabharata text.
The Mahabharata war, the date of which is an important milestone in the chronology of India. Traditionally, Indians have believed that the war took place about 3000 BCE. Modern scholars who have a more critical approach to the study of these epics took a different view. They did not believe the traditional view that the war took place so long ago, and they wanted to determine the date by using a variety of methods based on linguistics, methods based on archaeology, the genealogy lists in the Puranas, and methods based on astronomy. And they came up with a plethora of dates ranging from about 5000 BC all the way up to 500 AD.
Professor Archer uses a specially developed computer software program that enables him to view the night sky as it would have appeared at any time in the past. He has painstakingly reproduced the exact night sky for every reference to it in the Mahabharata. Professor Archer again.
Turns out the types of astronomical phenomena referred to in the epics consist of muhurtas, tithis, and then eclipses, comets, and the conjunctions of planets with different stars, and so on. In the Bhishma Parva, Vyasa meets with Dhritarashtra on the eve of the war and recites to him the omens that he has seen.
These omens predict the imminent war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and the terrible events which will befall both the Kuru family and the general population. The most significant of these omens is the appearance of two fiery comets.
People generally take the word Graha to represent a planet, but Vyasa here specifically represents Graha simply means that any object which can grasp a star, and it can be a planet, a comet, or an asteroid. Here he specifically says that it's a comet because Graho Tamraruna Shikho Prajwalitao Ubho. The two grahas with blazing coppery red hair. No planet has blazing coppery red hair, it's only the comets which have that. So Vyasa specifically refers to Graha, in comets as Graha. Then I have that convinced that the verses in Bhishma Parva are really not incoherent, inconsistent, contradictory, but in fact they form a very consistent.
Professor Archer has identified further astronomical references in two of the books of the Mahabharata, namely the Udyoga and the Bhishma Parvas. Again, these were regarded as omens of imminent disaster. These were when Saturn was at Aldebaran and Mars performed a retrograde motion near Antares.
Now the astronomical events which are common to both Udyoga Parva and Bhishma Parva are these. Saturn is at Aldebaran. Mars has performed a retrograde motion at Antares. the lunar eclipse in the month of Kartika, which occurs at Pleiades, is followed by a solar eclipse near Antares. So I searched for the years between 3500 BCE to about 500 CE, a range of 4,000 years. In this, there are 137 such conjunctions where Saturn is at Aldebaran.
Here we see Saturn's transit at Aldebaran. It's an event which is even today considered by Indian astrologers to be associated with great wars and violent events. The last transit of Saturn at Aldebaran was in 2001 AD, the year of ground zero, Saturn's retrogression seemingly predicting the exact month, September. Professor Acha again.
And then I searched for those years in which Mars would perform a retrograde motion near Antares. Now Mars does that when about its synodic period is about 680 days. So I searched for a period of 2.5 years on either side of each of these 137 dates. And it turns out that this reduces the set of dates from 137 to just 17. And then I looked for those years where there is a lunar eclipse in the month of Kartika, that is near Pleiades. And this reduces the set from 17 to just 2.
These 2 years identified by Professor Acha were 2183 BC and 3067 BC.
I thought I could use a solar eclipse to eliminate one of those, but it turns out on both of these days, the lunar eclipse is followed by a solar eclipse which occurs in near Antares. In 2183 BCE, the winter solstice occurs in the waning phase of the moon, Krishna Panchami. And in 3067 BCE, it occurs in the waxing phase, and we want the waxing phase. So this is one way to eliminate that this 3067 BCE is the year of the war. For the 2183 BCE, to satisfy that 64 days between those two intervals, the war must have started on an Amavasya, on a new moon day. And we have definite information from the epic that the war did not start or could not have started on an Amavasya, because on the 14th day of the war, they break all rules of war. The war continues into night, and they break only when the moon rises and the wee hours early in the morning. Now, if the war had started on an Amavasya, the 14th day would have been in the waxing phase, and the moon would rise early in the evening and not early in the morning.
Moreover, a careful study of the epic yields data about a third eclipse in October 3067 BC, which follows the solar eclipse at an interval of 13 days, just as the epic describes. The evidence presented by Professor Acha overwhelmingly pinpoints 3067 BC as the year when the great battle described in the Mahabharata took place. Detailed examinations of the astronomical references mentioned in the Mahabharata show that they were based on real astronomical events that actually took place, and are not a writer's imaginary description. Because the astronomical dates and events described in the Mahabharata have been authenticated by modern scientific method, it is reasonable to conclude that the Mahabharata itself is also a factual description of events that actually took place. In acknowledging this, we are bound to recognize that Krishna, one of the Mahabharata's principal characters, must have been based on a real person. If we also take into account the archaeological evidence, and that handed down by the Indian oral and living traditions, we are led to the inevitable conclusion that Krishna did actually exist. Whilst the evidence doesn't prove that he performed miracles or had supernatural powers, does clearly authenticate that there was a real person, a man of quite extraordinary powers called Krishna. The skeptics may be doubtful, but let a believer have the last word.
I am like the lotus flower, and Krishna is like the sun. And although there is such a great distance between us, I open simply due to your rays. And without you, how could I even exist?
I'm going to make a conclusive point here that one final evidence, and he's making it in the movie, is the living tradition. And Srila Prabhupada has given us that. So our last picture is of Radha Shama Sundar. And these are our experience that Krishna, I mean, obviously he always existed, he always will exist, he's eternal. But the living tradition, you come to this temple and you see the number of people coming and the worship is going on daily and the flowers and the devotion, that this is the most compelling. You can take all the astrological proof you want, you can take all the historical references, all the sites, but his point in the movie was that for us, it's the living tradition. And for this we have to thank Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming. Sorry we ran over so much, but I hope you found this helpful. Tomorrow we will go into the chapter and we will conclude with scenes from Dwarka's research. And again, hopefully this helps you appreciate what Prabhupada has given us. Hare Krishna.